Picture this: a chess game where only one player knows they're playing. The other sits across the board, believing they're having a casual conversation, maybe even helping a friend. They don't see the pieces moving. They don't hear the clock ticking. They don't realize they're 3 moves away from checkmate. This is the world of the manipulator, a shadow realm where influence flows like water, invisible and relentless, shaping everything it touches. Tonight, we're going to journey into that darkness, not to judge, not to condemn, but to understand. Because understanding is the only light that can pierce through their carefully constructed illusions. Close your eyes and imagine walking through a house of mirrors. Each reflection shows you something different. Some make you look taller, stronger, more beautiful. Others distort you into something unrecognizable. But here's the thing about mirrors in a manipulator's house. They don't reflect reality. They reflect what they want you to see, what they need you to believe. The manipulator stands at the center of this maze, watching, always watching. They've learned that people don't see the world as it is. People see the world as they need it to be. And in that gap between reality and perception, the manipulator builds their kingdom. Think about the last time someone made you feel truly understood, how your defenses melted away, how you opened up without even realizing it. That feeling, that beautiful human need for connection, becomes a doorway in the manipulator's world. They don't break down walls. They simply paint doors on them. Doors only they can see through. But let's pause here. Let's breathe. Because this isn't a story about evil people hiding in dark corners. This is a story about all of us. About the ways we influence each other, the ways we seek power, the ways we sometimes lose ourselves in the process of trying to be loved. The manipulator wasn't born with these skills. They learned them the way a child learns to walk, through trial and error, through pain and necessity. Maybe they grew up in a home where love was conditional, where survival depended on reading the emotional weather of volatile adults. Maybe they learned that their own needs didn't matter, that their only value lay in what they could provide for others. So they became shapeshifters, emotional chameleons. They learned to mirror what others wanted to see, to anticipate what others needed to hear. At first, it was protection, a way to stay safe in an unsafe world. But somewhere along the way, the mask fused with their face. The performance became their reality, and they forgot that there was ever anything underneath. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it explains it. An explanation is the first step toward recognition. Because when you understand how they became who they are, you can see the patterns. You can recognize the techniques. You can spot the warning signs before you're too deep in their web to find your way out. The chess game is ancient, as old as human relationships themselves, but the rules are learnable. The patterns are predictable. And once you know you're playing, once you can see the board clearly, you realize something profound. You've always had the power to walk away. But walking away requires seeing. And seeing requires understanding. And understanding requires courage. The courage to look at uncomfortable truths. The courage to question what you've been told to believe. The courage to trust your own perceptions, even when everyone around you suggests they're wrong. Tonight, we're going to develop that courage together. We're going to learn to see in the dark. We're going to understand the game well enough to recognize when we're being played. And we're going to remember something that manipulators hope we forget, that we are not powerless, even when we feel most trapped. Let's start with something simple, something that happens every day, in every conversation, in every relationship. It's called emotional reciprocity. When someone shares something vulnerable with you, you feel compelled to share something back. It's human nature. It's how we bond. It's how we build trust. The manipulator knows this. They know it like a musician knows their instrument. They'll tell you a secret that isn't really a secret, something carefully chosen to make you feel special, trusted, included. Maybe it's about their difficult childhood. Maybe it's about their deepest fears. Maybe it's about a mistake they made, delivered with just the right amount of shame and vulnerability to make you want to comfort them. It sounds genuine because, in a way, it is. The manipulator has learned to weaponize their own pain. They take real experiences, real emotions, real vulnerabilities, and they craft them into keys. Keys designed to unlock the door to your own secrets. And once that door is open, they're inside. You won't feel invaded. You'll feel understood, connected. Finally, someone who gets you. Someone who sees past your walls. What you don't realize is that they're collecting pieces of you. Your insecurities, your dreams, your pressure points. They're mapping your emotional landscape, learning where you're vulnerable, where you're strong, where you can be influenced. This is the first law of manipulation. People defend against force, but they embrace understanding. Push someone, and they push back, but make them feel seen, truly seen, and they'll lower every defense they have. They'll hand you the blueprint to their heart and thank you for caring enough to ask. The exchange feels balanced, equal, but it's not. You're giving them your truth while they're giving you their performance. You're sharing your real self while they're sharing their strategic self. And in that imbalance, power shifts, slowly, quietly, like sand falling through an hourglass. Watch how they do it. Notice the timing. They don't start with the big revelations. They begin with smaller things. Testing your response, seeing how much empathy you have to give, measuring your capacity for care. And when they find that you're someone who naturally wants to help, someone who feels good about being trusted, someone who derives meaning from being needed, they know they've found fertile ground. They'll tell you about their ex who didn't understand them, about their family who never appreciated them, about their friends who betrayed them. Always, they're the victim. Always, they're the one who gave too much, loved too hard, trusted too easily. And you, with your kind heart and your desire to heal, start to believe that you can be different, that you can be the one who finally sees them, loves them, saves them. But here's what they don't tell you. There is no saving them, because they're not actually drowning. They're standing on solid ground, arms outstretched, calling for help to draw you into the water. The stories they tell you about their past relationships aren't cautionary tales. They're previews of coming attractions. They're showing you exactly how they'll treat you once the honeymoon phase is over. Yet the reciprocity feels so natural, so healthy, so much like real intimacy that you don't question it. You don't analyze it. You just feel grateful to have found someone who understands vulnerability, who values emotional connection, who isn't afraid to go deep. And that gratitude becomes another tool in their hands. Because grateful people are compliant people. Grateful people don't ask hard questions. Grateful people excuse bad behavior because they remember the good times. Grateful people stay longer than they should, give more than they have, and forgive things that should never be forgiven. The beautiful irony is that your capacity for love, your ability to connect, your genuine desire for intimacy, these strengths become the very weaknesses they exploit. Not because there's anything wrong with these qualities, but because they know how to weaponize them against you. They study your compassion like a scientist studies a specimen. They learn its limits, its triggers, its blind spots. They discover what stories make you cry, what injustices make you angry, what dreams make you hopeful. And then they craft their presentations accordingly, always giving you just enough truth to make the lies believable, just enough vulnerability to make the manipulation feel like intimacy. This is why good people often fall for manipulators, because manipulators don't target the weak or the gullible. They target the strong, the caring, the generous. They target people who have something worth taking, and they use our best qualities, our most beautiful impulses, as weapons against us. But recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking free from it. When you understand how emotional reciprocity works, you can start to notice when it's being used against you. You can feel the difference between genuine sharing and strategic vulnerability. You can sense when someone is collecting information rather than building connection. And most importantly, you can remember that real intimacy doesn't feel like an excavation. It doesn't feel like you're being studied or analyzed or dissected. Real intimacy feels safe. It feels mutual. It feels like coming home to yourself, not losing yourself in someone else's story. Now, let's go deeper, into the quiet spaces where manipulation takes root and grows like fungus in the dark. Have you ever noticed how some people have this way of making you question your own memory? You could swear they said one thing, but they insist they said another, not aggressively, not dramatically, just quietly, with this look of gentle confusion, as if they're genuinely trying to help you remember correctly. This is gaslighting in its purest form, not the obvious kind that movies show us, with shouting and accusations. The real kind, the kind that whispers, the kind that plants seeds of doubt so small you don't even notice them sprouting. Until one day, you wake up and realize you don't trust your own perceptions anymore. The manipulator doesn't want to control your actions. That's amateur hour. They want to control your reality. Because if they control what you believe is true, they control everything that flows from that belief. Your decisions, your relationships, your sense of self-worth, your future. They do this through reality revision. It starts small, tiny inconsistencies, minor contradictions, things that make you think, that's strange, but maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they promised to call you yesterday, but today they insist they said they'd call this weekend. Maybe they told you they loved your new haircut, but now they're asking why you changed it when it looked so good before. Each incident is small enough to dismiss, forgettable, not worth fighting about. But they accumulate like drops of water wearing away stone. And slowly, imperceptibly, your confidence in your own memory begins to erode. Then it grows. The inconsistencies get bigger, the contradictions more frequent. They start rewriting conversations you had just hours ago. They deny saying things you clearly remember them saying. They insist events happen differently than you experienced them. But by then, you've already accepted the premise that your memory isn't reliable, that your perceptions might be flawed, that you need them to help you understand what really happened. And once you accept that premise, you're living in their world, a world where truth is fluid, where up might be down, depending on what serves their needs, where your feelings are too sensitive, and your concerns are dramatic, and your instincts are paranoid. A world where they are the reliable narrator of your own life story. But here's something beautiful about the human spirit. It has this quiet rebellion against false realities. Your body knows. Your nervous system knows. Even when your mind is confused, your body keeps score. It remembers the tension, the unease, the way your stomach tightens when they speak, the way your shoulders rise when they enter the room. Your intuition doesn't lie the way memories can be made to lie. Your gut feelings don't get confused the way thoughts can be made to get confused. Your body's wisdom runs deeper than your conscious mind, and it recognizes danger even when your heart wants to believe in love. This is why gaslighting victims often report feeling crazy, because there's a war happening inside them. Their mind has been convinced that their perceptions are unreliable, but their body keeps sending alarm signals. Their thoughts have been colonized by doubt, but their instincts keep screaming warnings. And the disconnect between what they think they should feel and what they actually feel creates a kind of psychological vertigo that's almost unbearable. The manipulator knows this. They can see the confusion in your eyes, the way you second-guess yourself, the way you've started asking them to confirm your own experiences. And they feed on that uncertainty like a vampire feeds on blood. Because confused people don't set boundaries. Uncertain people don't make demands. Disoriented people don't leave relationships, even toxic ones. They've learned to use your own memory against you. They know that memory is reconstructive, not reproductive. That every time you remember something, you're not playing back a recording, but rebuilding the experience from fragments. And in that rebuilding process, there's room for suggestion, for influence, for subtle alterations that change the entire meaning of what happened. So they become editors of your history. They revise your past to serve their present needs. They make you doubt not just what happened, but what it meant. Not just what they said, but what they intended. Not just your perceptions, but your right to have perceptions at all. And the most insidious part is that they often do this while positioning themselves as your ally. "I'm not trying to make you feel bad," they'll say. "I'm just trying to help you remember what really happened." They present their gaslighting as a gift, their manipulation as love, their control as care. The reality revision becomes so thorough that you start to question everything. Did that conversation really happen the way you remember? Are you being too sensitive about their tone? Did they actually promise that thing, or did you just imagine it? Are you losing your mind, or are they stealing your sanity piece by piece? And in that state of constant self-doubt, you become incredibly malleable. You start checking with them before you trust your own experiences. You apologize for reactions you're not sure you should be having. You second-guess every instinct, every feeling, every memory. This is the goal. Not to make you doubt one specific thing, but to make you doubt your capacity to know anything at all. To make you so uncertain of your own perceptions that you have no choice but to rely on theirs. To make you a stranger to yourself, living in a reality that serves their needs rather than reflecting your truth. But your truth is still there, buried under layers of doubt and confusion, but still there. Still beating like a heart beneath the surface. Still waiting for you to remember that you know what you know, that you feel what you feel, that your reality is valid, even when they insist it isn't. The skilled manipulator is also a master of emotional theater. They know that feelings are contagious, that emotions spread from person to person like ripples in still water. They understand the subtle art of emotional contagion, and they use it like a painter uses a brush, creating whatever emotional landscape serves their purpose. Watch them in a room full of people. See how they read the emotional temperature, how they adjust their energy to match what's needed. Sad when sadness serves them. Angry when anger opens doors. Charming when charm smooths the way. But it's not authentic emotion. It's performance, precise, calculated, designed to evoke a specific response in their audience. They've learned that people make decisions with their emotions and then use logic to justify those decisions afterward. So they don't argue with your logic. They don't try to convince your rational mind. They speak directly to your feelings. They make you feel guilty for setting boundaries, selfish for prioritizing your needs, crazy for trusting your instincts. A guilt feels real because it is real. The shame burns because shame always burns. The confusion clouds your mind because confusion is genuinely disorienting. But these emotions, while authentic in your experience, are manufactured in their intention. They've learned to play your emotional keyboard like a virtuoso, knowing exactly which keys to press to create the symphony they need. And because these emotions feel so overwhelming, so consuming, you assume they must be justified. You must have done something wrong. You must be the problem. After all, feelings don't lie, right? But feelings can be manufactured. Emotions can be weaponized. And in the hands of a skilled manipulator, your own heart becomes a tool they use against you. They create emotional weather systems around themselves. Storms of confusion, droughts of affection, sudden downpours of attention. And you learn to live in their climate, adjusting yourself to their emotional seasons, never questioning whether the weather is natural or artificially created. Consider how they use anger. Not explosive rage that would drive people away, but cold fury that makes you feel like you've disappointed them, like you failed to live up to their expectations, like you've hurt someone who only wanted to love you. This anger doesn't shout. It sighs. It looks at you with disappointment. It makes you want to apologize for things you didn't do, to make amends for crimes you didn't commit. Or watch how they deploy sadness. Not the healthy sadness of genuine grief, but the manipulative sadness that says, "Look what you've done to me." The tears that fall not from pain, but from strategy. The wounded expression that makes you feel like a monster for setting a boundary, for saying no, for prioritizing your own well-being. They've studied you like a scientist studies a subject. They know which emotions move you most. They know whether you're more susceptible to guilt or fear, to pity or anger. They know whether you're the kind of person who caves under pressure or responds to appeals to your compassion. And they tailor their emotional performances accordingly. But perhaps most dangerously, they've learned to mimic love. Not the steady, consistent love of healthy relationships, but the intoxicating, overwhelming love that feels like destiny. The love that says, "I've never felt this way before, and you're the only one who understands me, and we're meant to be together." The love that feels so intense, so consuming, so special that you'd do anything to keep it. This manufactured love is perhaps their most powerful weapon because it co-opts your deepest needs. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to feel special, chosen, irreplaceable. And when someone offers you this kind of all-consuming adoration, it's almost impossible to question whether it's real. But real love doesn't demand that you lose yourself. Real love doesn't require you to betray your own values. Real love doesn't make you feel crazy or confused or constantly walking on eggshells. Real love is consistent, respectful, and honoring of your autonomy. The manipulator's love is a drug. And like any drug, it creates tolerance. You need more and more of it to feel normal. You start to believe that this intensity is what love should feel like, that anything less dramatic must not be real love at all. And in chasing that high, you lose sight of what healthy love actually looks like. They use your emotions against you in ways that feel like care. When you're angry, they don't dismiss your anger. They redirect it. They help you see that you're not really angry at them. You're angry at your job, your family, your past. They become your therapist, your guide, your emotional interpreter. And in accepting their interpretation of your feelings, you give them control over your inner world. When you're sad, they comfort you in ways that make you more dependent on them. They become the only one who truly understands your pain, the only one who can soothe it. They make themselves indispensable to your emotional well-being, so that leaving them feels like choosing to suffer. When you're happy, they find ways to make that happiness contingent on them. They take credit for your joy, position themselves as the source of your contentment. They make you believe that without them, you'd return to the darkness they rescued you from. This is emotional parasitism. They feed on your feelings, using them to sustain their power over you. Your emotions become their tools. Your heart becomes their weapon. Your capacity for feeling becomes the very thing that traps you in their web. Here's where it gets truly insidious. The manipulator has learned one of the most powerful lessons from behavioral psychology: intermittent reinforcement. It's the principle that makes gambling addictive. The reason people pull slot machine levers for hours, hoping for that next payout. The reason that unpredictable rewards create stronger behavioral patterns than consistent ones. In relationships, this looks like unpredictable kindness. They're not always cruel. They're not always cold. Sometimes they're wonderful. Sometimes they're everything you dreamed they could be. And those moments, those brief glimpses of paradise, become more addictive than any drug. Your brain learns to crave those moments of connection, of approval, of love. It starts to believe that if you just try a little harder, if you just understand them a little better, if you just give a little more, you can make those beautiful moments happen more often. You become addicted to the possibility of their love, even as you slowly starve from the reality of their indifference. This is why people stay in toxic relationships long after logic says they should leave. It's not because they're weak or stupid or masochistic. It's because their brain has been rewired by intermittent reinforcement to see hope where others see red flags, to see potential where others see patterns of harm. The manipulator knows this. They know that consistent cruelty would drive you away, so they give you just enough kindness to keep you hooked, just enough affection to keep you hoping, just enough promises to keep you believing. And in between those moments of light, you'll endure incredible darkness, telling yourself it's worth it for those precious few moments when they love you the way you've always dreamed of being loved. But those moments aren't gifts. They're not signs that they're changing or that your patience is paying off. They're calculated doses of what you need, administered precisely to keep you dependent. Like a dealer giving just enough of a fix to prevent withdrawal, but never enough to satisfy the craving completely. Think about how this plays out in real time. You've been walking on eggshells for weeks, trying not to upset them, trying to decode their moods, trying to be the perfect partner. You're exhausted, depleted, questioning your own sanity. And then, suddenly, they're sweet again. They bring you flowers. They tell you they love you. They make love to you like you're the most precious thing in the world. And in that moment, you feel such relief, such gratitude, such hope. You think, this is the real them? This is who they are underneath all that pain and trauma. This is worth fighting for. You forget about the weeks of coldness, the cruel words, the way they made you feel small and worthless. Because this moment feels so good, so right, so much like the love you've been starving for. But the intermittent reinforcement schedule is precise. They give you just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to satisfy you completely. Just enough to make you believe change is possible, but never enough to actually change. Just enough to make leaving feel impossible, but never enough to make staying feel good. And your brain, desperate for those moments of connection, starts to do incredible mental gymnastics to make sense of the inconsistency. You create narratives about their childhood trauma. You make excuses for their behavior. You blame yourself for their bad moods. You convince yourself that love is supposed to be hard, that anything worth having is worth suffering for. The slot machine of their affection keeps you pulling the lever, even as your resources drain away, even as your friends express concern, even as your family stops recognizing you, even as you lose yourself completely in the pursuit of their unpredictable love. And the cruelest part is that they often increase the intermittent reinforcement when they sense you pulling away. When you start to question the relationship, when you begin to set boundaries, when you show signs of leaving, suddenly they become the perfect partner again. They love bomb you back into compliance, showering you with attention and affection and promises of change. This is called hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner brand, because they're sucking you back in. And it works because it triggers the same neural pathways that were activated during the initial honeymoon phase. It makes you remember why you fell in love with them in the first place. It makes you believe that this time will be different. But it never is, because the intermittent reinforcement isn't a bug in their system. It's a feature. It's not something they do unconsciously. It's something they do strategically, whether they admit it to themselves or not. Because keeping you addicted to their love is how they maintain power over you. The beautiful moments aren't rewards for your good behavior. They're bait to keep you engaged in a game you can never win. Because the house always wins in gambling, and the manipulator always wins in the game of intermittent enforcement. The only way to win is to stop playing entirely. But stopping feels impossible when your brain has been rewired to crave their approval, when your nervous system has been conditioned to see their rare moments of kindness as life-giving water in an emotional desert, when your heart has been taught that this unpredictable love is better than no love at all. Recovery from intermittent reinforcement trauma takes time. It requires retraining your brain to recognize that consistent, reliable love is possible, that you don't have to earn affection through perfect behavior, That love shouldn't feel like a slot machine, where you never know when the next payout is coming. It requires learning to find satisfaction in the steady, predictable kindness of healthy relationships, even when it doesn't have the addictive highs of toxic intermittent reinforcement. It requires remembering that peace is more valuable than passion, that stability is more precious than intensity, that being loved reliably is more fulfilling than being loved dramatically. The truly sophisticated manipulator doesn't work alone. They build networks, ecosystems of influence that surround you like a spider's web, so delicate you don't notice until you try to move and realize you're trapped. They befriend your friends. They charm your family. They position themselves as helpful, concerned, trustworthy. And slowly, subtly, they begin to influence how others see you. Not through obvious lies or dramatic accusations, but through gentle questions, concerned observations, worried comments. I'm a little concerned about Sarah lately. She seems stressed, a little paranoid maybe. I'm worried she might be having some kind of breakdown. They say this with love in their voice, worry creasing their brow. They present themselves as your devoted friend, confused and hurt by your sudden hostility or irrational behavior. And your support network, genuinely caring about you, begins to see you through their lens. They start to question your perceptions, your reactions, your version of events. Not because they don't love you, but because the manipulator has planted seeds of doubt about your reliability, your stability, your mental state. This is triangulation at its most insidious. They create a narrative about you that becomes self-reinforcing. When you try to explain what's really happening, you sound defensive. When you try to set boundaries, you seem unreasonable. When you try to leave, you appear unstable. The very people who should support you become unwitting accomplices in your psychological imprisonment. The manipulator sits at the center of this web, pulling strings you can't see, moving pieces on a board you didn't know existed. They've isolated you not by keeping others away, but by making others see you as the problem, by making your truth sound like delusion and your boundaries sound like attacks. Watch how carefully they craft their public image. They're helpful at work, charming at parties, generous with acquaintances. They volunteer for causes. They remember birthdays. They offer assistance when people are struggling. They build a reputation as someone kind, caring, reliable, someone who would never hurt another person. And this public persona becomes armor. When you try to tell people what they're really like, it sounds impossible. But they're so nice, people say. They've always been so good to me. Are you sure you're not misunderstanding their intentions? Your truth bounces off their reputation like arrows off a shield. They've learned to use your own relationships against you. They'll mention to your mother how worried they are about your drinking. They'll confide in your best friend about how distant you've become. They'll express concern to your colleagues about your stress levels. And because they position themselves as the loving, concerned partner, people believe them. Meanwhile, you're becoming increasingly isolated. Your attempts to explain the situation make you sound crazy. Your efforts to defend yourself make you appear guilty. Your growing desperation to be believed makes you seem unhinged. And the manipulator, calm and reasonable and concerned, looks like the long-suffering partner of someone who's clearly struggling with mental health issues. This is systematic destruction of your credibility. They don't need to convince everyone that you're lying. They just need to plant enough doubt that people question your version of events. They don't need to make everyone dislike you. They just need to make everyone worry about you in a way that undermines your autonomy. And perhaps most insidiously, they often recruit people who genuinely care about you to participate in your control. Your mother starts calling more often to check on you. Your friends start avoiding topics that might stress you out. Your colleagues start treating you with kid gloves. Everyone becomes complicit in the narrative that you're fragile, unstable, unreliable. The manipulator has weaponized love against you. They've turned your support network into a surveillance network. They've made your relationships into tools of control. And the most painful part is that most of these people genuinely believe they're helping you. They have no idea they're participating in your psychological destruction. This is why leaving a manipulative relationship is so difficult. It's not just about leaving one person. It's about leaving an entire reality, an entire social system that has been carefully constructed to keep you in place. It's about accepting that people you love and trust have been deceived, and that trying to convince them of the truth might cost you those relationships entirely. The web is intricate, the threads are nearly invisible, and the spider sits in the center, patient and still, waiting for any vibration that tells them you're trying to break free. They create flying monkeys, people who unknowingly do their bidding. These aren't evil people. They're often kind, well-meaning individuals who have been fed a carefully crafted narrative about your instability, your unreasonableness, your need for help. They genuinely believe they're being supportive when they encourage you to work things out, or try to understand their perspective, or get some help for your anger issues. The manipulator never has to lift a finger to isolate you. Your own support network does it for them, convinced that they're acting in your best interest. This is the genius of systemic manipulation. It turns your strength against you, your relationships into prison bars, your love into chains. And when you finally try to break free, when you finally find the courage to speak your truth, you discover that the battlefield has already been prepared. Your credibility has been systematically undermined. Your support system has been compromised. Your reality has been preemptively discredited. This is why so many people stay silent about abuse, because they know that speaking up might mean losing not just their abuser, but everyone else too. The web of control extends far beyond the primary relationship, creating a social ecosystem that punishes truth-telling and rewards compliance. But here's the thing about manipulation. It only works as long as it remains invisible. The moment you see it clearly, its power begins to crumble. Like a magic trick explained, once you know how it's done, you can never be fooled by it again. The awakening doesn't always come as a dramatic revelation. More often, it's a quiet recognition. A moment when you realize that the person you've been trying so hard to please will never be pleased. That the love you've been chasing was never really on offer. That the reality you've been doubting is actually more trustworthy than the one they've been selling you. Maybe it happens when you're lying in bed at 3 a.m, your mind racing through conversations, trying to figure out what you did wrong this time. And suddenly, a small voice inside you whispers, "What if I didn't do anything wrong? What if this isn't about me at all?" Or maybe it happens when you catch them in an obvious lie, something so blatant that even your conditioned self-doubt can't explain it away. And in that moment, you realize that if they're lying about this, they might be lying about everything. Or maybe it happens when you see them treat someone else the way they treat you, and you feel a surge of protective anger on that person's behalf. And you think, no one deserves to be treated that way. And then slowly, it dawns on you that you don't deserve to be treated that way either. Your body starts to remember what peace feels like. Your nervous system begins to calm when they're not around. You notice that other relationships in your life don't feel this hard, this confusing, this draining. You start to trust your own perceptions again, slowly, carefully, like someone learning to walk after a long illness. The manipulator will sense this shift. They'll escalate their tactics, love bomb you back into compliance, or punish you for pulling away. They'll try to convince you that you're making a mistake, that you're throwing away something precious, that you'll never find anyone who understands you like they do. This is the extinction burst, the final desperate attempt to maintain control when they feel it's slipping away. And it can be intense. They might suddenly become the perfect partner, showering you with attention and promises of change. Or they might become cruel in ways you've never experienced, trying to break your spirit one last time. But once you've seen the puppet strings, you can't unsee them. Once you've recognized the pattern, you can't pretend it's random anymore. Once you've remembered your own worth, you can't forget it again. The journey out isn't easy. The web they've built around you doesn't disappear overnight. Some relationships may not survive your awakening. Some people may choose their version of reality over yours. Some bridges may burn as you walk across them toward freedom. But here's what you discover on the other side. You are stronger than you knew. You are wiser than you believed. You are more resilient than you imagined. The very fact that you survived their manipulation is proof of your incredible strength. You learn to trust yourself again. Not perfectly, not immediately, but gradually. You learn to distinguish between your voice and their voice in your head. You learn to honor your instincts, to set boundaries, to say no without guilt and yes without fear. You discover that real love doesn't feel like a battlefield, that healthy relationships don't require you to lose yourself, that you can be loved for who you are, not for what you provide or how well you perform or how much you sacrifice. And perhaps most importantly, you learn to have compassion for the person you were when you were trapped in their web. You forgive yourself for staying too long, for believing their lies, for losing yourself in their maze of mirrors. You understand that you weren't weak or stupid or naive. You were human. You were trying to love and be loved, and there's nothing shameful about that. The process of healing from manipulation is like learning to see color after living in black and white. At first, everything seems too bright, too intense. You might find yourself missing the familiar grayness of your old reality. Even though it was painful, this is normal. This is part of recovery. You learn to celebrate small victories. The first time you trust your memory over their revision. The first time you set a boundary without apologizing. The first time you say, "That's not acceptable," instead of "maybe I'm overreacting." Each of these moments is a small rebellion, a tiny revolution in the kingdom they built in your mind. You start to rebuild your reality from the ground up. You learn to fact-check your own experiences, to trust your own perceptions, to value your own feelings. You discover that you don't need external validation to know what's true, that your reality is valid even when others question it. The manipulator's kingdom was built on shadows and mirrors, on lies and illusions, on your beautiful capacity for love turned against you. But you are made of light. You are made of truth. You are made of the kind of strength that bends without breaking, that endures without becoming bitter, that loves without losing itself. And light, my friend, always wins in the end, not because it fights the darkness, but because it simply is. And in being itself, it illuminates everything around it. It shows things as they truly are. It reveals the difference between reality and illusion, between love and manipulation, between prison and freedom. This is why manipulators always win until you see it, until you understand that their power was always borrowed from you, until you realize that the game they've been playing requires your participation, and you have the right to stop playing at any time. The house of mirrors collapses when you stop looking at the reflections and start looking at the person holding them up. The chess game ends when you stand up from the board and walk away. The spell breaks when you remember that you were never powerless. You were just convinced that you were. And in that moment of recognition, in that quiet rebellion of the spirit, you reclaim something precious. Not just your freedom from them, but your faith in yourself, your trust in your own perceptions, your right to live in a reality that honors your truth. You remember that you are not a character in their story. You are the author of your own. And authors, my friend, have the power to write new endings, to create new chapters, to imagine new possibilities. The night is ending. The shadows are lifting. And you, beautiful soul, you are finally coming home to yourself, to the person you were before they convinced you that you were someone else, to the truth you knew before they taught you to doubt it, to the strength you possessed before they convinced you that you were weak. Sleep now, rest now. Dream of the life that awaits you on the other side of their web. Tomorrow, you begin again, not as their victim, but as your own hero, not as their project, but as your own masterpiece, not as their prisoner, but as your own liberator. You have always been free. You just forgot for a while. But forgetting is not forever. And remembering, once it begins, changes everything. The manipulator wins only until you see it. And now you see.